how I feel about Zoom on the daily. The reason why is because the algorithms that assess the facial structure and the hair structure are programmed for straight hair that goes down, not hair that goes towards the sun, which is how women of color hair.
Hi, hello, and welcome to According to Ease, the podcast, where we're going to have candid conversation with the hopes of finding a way forward in community. See, we exist and experience life at the intersection of our complex identities and our socio-cultural and political systems. And let's be real, the only way to dismantle it all is to start by dissecting it. So get cozy, get comfy, and let's dive in. What up, and welcome to whichever number episode of my podcast that we are currently recording. Okay, y'all, I am very hella excited about this episode for two reasons. One, and I know I say this all the time, but that's because I actually have the honor of being in community with some amazing people that agree to sit across from me and have conversations. But one, the person that I'm talking to today is somebody that y'all know when you like are out and about in the world and then you meet a person and you're like, oh my God, this person's my person. We're about to be best friends. This is what happened with this particular individual, and I will officially introduce them in a second. So I truly adore and love this person. The universe, all of the deities, all of the energies and frequencies in the world conspired to bring us into community with each other, and I'm very thankful. And also, we're talking about probably something that y'all are really fucking tired of hearing me say, which is the internet is oppressive as fuck, and the algorithms are not meant for us. So, without further ado, Madison, Miss Maddie Ray, thank you for being here, boo.
I am so excited to be here. Like, that whole story that you told about how all of the universe conspired and brought us together is so... I mean, when I saw Weeze, I was just like, my friend.
Hey, bestie.
I mean, the amount of just eye contact and just knowing what was going on was just like, it was so deep.
That was actually that moment. There was a moment we were in a social setting, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but we just happened to look at each other and like have a whole conversation. And I'm like, I've known this person for exactly 22 minutes. But like, we just became besties.
Right.
Like,
and what's amazing about that is that we actually honored what happened in that moment and kept it going. Right.
Yeah.
Because you know how many
100%.
times you meet people, oh, that's my bestie. And then you never talk to them again. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. This is a real...
No, literally, it was like, so are we going to dinner next week? So we're best friends now.
And we actually did that.
Yeah. So I also have to give that context because people are going to be like, this feels like y'all just have these conversations all the time, because we do. So this more than probably any other conversation that we've had this season is literally like, y'all could have just happened to be eavesdropping on a conversation that we had over dinner or at coffee or walking around and been like, oh, I just learned something. So you're welcome. But two, before we get into algorithms of oppression and how the internet ain't shit, listen, you know I got kicked off Facebook. They know I got kicked off Facebook. I feel away.
You did say that they were going to get tired of you saying this over and over again. But ain't nobody tired. We ready.
Right. But before we do that, I want you to just tell the people, who are you? What do you do? Why are you I mean, I know why you're uniquely positioned, obviously, but why are you uniquely positioned to really have this conversation, the insight that you have? What do you want people to know in the context of this conversation in this moment?
Well, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I'm
welcome.
Madison. It's nice to meet everyone. Just to keep it short, I like to consider myself as someone who is working in the liberation movement, specifically in technology. I was in the tech industry for a really long time. I was in the nonprofit sector for a while and now working in social justice creative. But for over a decade, I was subscribed to what, whiteness and technology really means. And it affected my everyday life. And so I think as a person, I've sort of set out to do things in my life that not only expose what that feeling is like for individuals, but what that feeling is like across the technology industry culturally, and then how that culture permeates pretty much every single waking moment of our lives, and how until we expose it and really find ways to combat against it, will it continue to control us, just like many other systems. I mean, the truth of the matter is that all systems that were already racist before are just being supported by technology. And I'm a person that works in that world and wants to create space for us to not only expose it, but to eradicate it and bust it down.
End of episode. Thank you so much for being here. That was the greatest TLDR ever. I gotta say, that was really good. Okay, cool. So we have the context. I want us to actually just literally springboard from what you just said, how, just so we can contextualize the conversation, right? How technology at this point is really just supporting all existing systems of oppression. But, and also, because I see it almost like as a chicken and the egg. Like at this point, it's supporting all the existing systems, but it's also informed by all the existing systems and ideologies, right? And so it's this like really gross, cyclical, like scratch my back, I scratch yours consistently. And obviously it's because white folks invented the internet and are the ones doing the coding and shit. But we'll get into that a little deeper. But just contextualize that for folks. Like expand on it a little bit more. What does that mean and how do we see that in our like daily?
The thing about technologies, it's such an expansive subject to talk about. I mean, it's like, well, when you say technology, what do you mean? Are you talking about the phones that we use every day? Are you talking about the internet at large? Are you talking about artificial intelligence? Some people listening to this podcast are like, what is artificial intelligence? Is it like a Terminator type of situation? Is it those police dogs that are rolling up inside of my apartment complex?
Right.
Like just watching me? Like what are all of these things and how do you actually contextualize it? But I do want to start with like what you were saying is the premise of how sort of the technology industry and the pedagogy and the thought process that went into creating a lot of the things that we actually utilize to live our daily lives. That was done explicitly in whiteness by choice, right? So if you look at, and we're based in Oakland, so if you look at the Silicon Valley and you look at what has come out of the Silicon Valley, it is the mecca for technology, predominantly produced and orchestrated by white people, not just in the code and just like people working at the companies, but also in the thought process of how the technology is going to be designed, how it's developed, and how it's going to be implemented and used. And so when you look at that as the premise or the foundation for technology, and then you say, okay, I'm going to be a Black person and utilize technology in my life, you're essentially utilizing something that a white person designed for you to use in a specific way as a Black person.
And where's the problem in that?
Well, oh my gosh, where is the problem? Okay, I mean, there's at this point, just like there is in any other context of, you know, whiteness doing wrong, there is many examples of how technology, you know, fights against people of color, and specifically Black people. I just want to say that like to the point, you know what I mean? It's like, yes, we can talk about people of color, right? That's one thing that we're talking about. But when we're talking about Black people and we're talking about how technology oppresses Black people, that's a very deep level conversation. I think it happens in kind of varying stages, but the way that I organize it in my brain, in the circles that I move in, and the conversations that we have in the technology world, and those that are working to combat the oppression that is happening, the first is in the actual technology itself. So whether it's hardware, which is like our phones that we use, the physical phone that we pick up and operate with every day, or software, which is everything that's happening on the physical device itself, it's rid with racism and bias. Like in a hardware context, you've got companies that are designing cameras that were built by white folks that only have the level of exposure and light usage to see a white face. It literally cannot take a good picture of a Black face because it wasn't, never in the process of developing that camera did someone say, hey, what would this look like on a person that was Black? Because the algorithms that assess the facial structure and the hair structure are programmed for straight hair that goes down, not hair that grows towards the sun, which is how women of color's hair grows towards the sun, right? So I think that, you know, even in those two contexts, like those people might be, well, what harm does that really cause? Okay, well, if you take it to the next level on the camera tip, you've now got cameras that don't assess or measure or work for people of color and people with darker skin tones going into systems of artificial intelligence that are tracking the measurement of faces against somebody that did a crime. So you've got police databases and systems that are looking at pictures of folks and saying, oh, this person robbed a Circle K, so let's go and arrest this person, even though it's not that person that did that, right? And then you've got that person getting arrested and subject to the white supremacy that is operating within law enforcement. By the way, was founded on that. Let's not get it twisted.
Oh, there's an entire podcast episode in season 1 about exactly that, called From Slave Patrol to Policing.
If you don't believe that police are synonymous with slave patrol, you can go and listen to that podcast. But there's many readings and things that you can do to liberate yourself, right? We liberate ourselves and then we liberate others.
Yep.
So you can go and do that work. But I think you take that person then gets arrested. They are then subject to the white abuse that happens in that context. And before you know it, they're in the criminal justice system, which is also now running on racist technology in pretrial risk assessment, which a lot of people say, well, what is that? It's an AI that will say this person is going to flee or not flee before they're given court date. I'll tell you right now, that thing says that Black people are going to do crimes again and white people are not, even though that's not what the data actually is. Because those systems have been trained on things that teach them the racism that already exists. The racism is in the data. So if you stack it like that, what you're realizing is that it all operates and works to continue to keep us oppressed, just like anything else works in any oppression context or construction.
Yeah. So I want to take this conversation and then up level it to language, specifically in social media, in Google searches, in the way that language is actually even coded into, right, AI and algorithms and so on and so forth, because that's a really big one that we're just seeing people talk about all the time. I think it's easier for people to understand, people who are open to the realities, right, of deeply racist, biased technology, or bias and racism being baked into the technology, right? AOC was on the Senate floor talking about it, but there's this belief that the actual algorithms that serve around language on Google, Facebook, IG, any of these social media platforms is actually the boogeyman, and it's not real. And we're all just making it up, that we're either shadow banned or, case in point, getting kicked off Facebook for fucking nothing, or, whatever the case may be. So take us down that path a little bit as well.
Right. So I think the first thing to root yourself in and to understand is that technology is created by humans, right?
Say more things.
it's not like this completely objective thing that's oh, we make this piece of technology or we make this algorithm. And even just to take it a step back, people think, oh my gosh, what is artificial intelligence? Even just to boil it all the way down and just make it accessible across the board, because this is all, by the way, this is all something that you can teach yourself as well, right? The knowledge of technology is not only just afforded to the few, anybody can get themselves into the mix with this. And so I like to encourage people to find ways to go and self-educate on how these systems work and what they do. But at the simplest level, an algorithm, which is if artificial intelligence is a field of study, which was created by white folks, and it's a field of operation, an algorithm is math, right? It's very simple. It's you put something in, you put in a set of inputs, a set of instructions, and then the algorithm says, this is the outcome of the instructions that you do, right? We do algorithms every single day. For example, if you're going to get up in the morning and get ready for work, you're operating on an algorithm. I get out of bed, I put my feet down, I walk to the bathroom, I brush my teeth. You don't brush your teeth before you get out of bed. That would not be an algorithm. That's not a set of ordered instructions that then produce a specific outcome. Now, if you take that frame of thought and you say, okay, people that are not thinking with a liberation mindset, or not thinking with a mindset of the different varied experiences of people, they're saying, here are the outcome, or here are the inputs that are going to happen that are going to produce this outcome. So this is how people talk. If people talk A, B, C, D, E, that produces F. If people talk A, X, that produces, we're out of here. So that's kind of how the whole shadow ban situation works. It's like, okay, if we feel like people should say blah, 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 and they say something else, then that means that we just automatically cut them off. And we see that happening so much to communities of color, to Black people, whose not only are their voices different and their language is different, but obviously their experience in the world is different. So that experience doesn't match with the experience that these algorithms are seeing as an experience that needs to be elevated and spoken about, right? And you can go and read about stuff like Section 230 and all of the different things that sort of are operating around, that's a law that operates around how platforms are held responsible for things that are happening on their platforms. And again, the platforms don't want to be responsible for anything. They're just like, okay, well, people are just being people on here. But I think that at the end of the day, it's really about understanding that there's been a set of instructions or protocols or inputs or things that have been predispositioned for us. And because nobody that created that process was actually like us, it then combats against what our real life and lived experience is, and then says that, oh, that's not good. We can't promote that, or we can't put that out there, or that can't be said. Whether it's a perspective of a Black person or a queer person or someone that identifies as a woman, or et cetera, et cetera. The systems weren't designed to take in all these varying ideas and thoughts, right? They were only designed to really think through one thought process, and that's a middle-aged white male.
Named Bradley.
That's right.
I mean, that's what I call him. I don't know if that's actually his name, but the Brads and the Chads. Yeah. Doesn't really matter. The point is, middle-aged white bro he made it. It's like, it's FUBU for white people.
That's right.
For those that don't know, FUBU stands for us, by us. But it is.
That's right. And I think just when you come back to the language and the speech part of things too, one thing that I really think a lot about, and I'm just always trying to understand and to study and to figure it out, is so natural language processing is sort of a segment of artificial intelligence, if you call it. It's a way that computers actually utilize voices and text and figure out, okay, what is a person trying to say and how is it being interpreted, et cetera, et cetera. That system is rid with so much bias and racism that I feel like almost sometimes technology is twisting the meanings and the words of what people of color or Black people say. Because, by the way, nobody is feeding these NLP systems with ebonics or with varied forms of speech and cultural context, right?
Right. Like, let's just talk about the fact that I was so excited for inclusivity purposes when IG was like, we're going to auto caption your videos, right? That feature. It's like, we're going to auto caption your live videos when you save them, and you can just set it in your advanced setting to always auto caption. So save, boom, auto generated. And then I went and looked at and I was like, that's not what I said. That don't even make no goddamn sense.
You were like, y'all don't even have hella in here? Like,
okay. Like, even just the basics, like hella. And I think it turned hella into something wild. It was like, I don't even know what, like helium. I don't know what it thought I said, but I was like,
no,
this makes no sense.
I did not say helium. I said hella,
right?
Which is a cultural term used here. Just, I don't know, maybe 1.2 miles from where this auto generator was built. I mean, and then you think we can't even get it right for stuff that's in the vicinity of those making and creating and putting out the technology. Imagine how then that just gets worse and worse and worse the further you get from the Bay Area.
Right. I mean, and a word like hella, which has now been, it is a like sociocultural linguistic marker, right? It's not even like AAVE anymore, anything like that. It is just part of the Bay's culture. So even a word like that all of you little tech bros are using left and right, like couldn't even get written into the, like, y'all are whack. Like, I get so salty. And granted, I know why it does it. I understand all of that. But I say all of that to say, And so if this feels like an okay point to transition, unless there's like more on this that you want to say, and obviously it's your show. I'm just here. This is also one of the reasons why I really look at the ways in which technology specifically and social media and the ways that the functions that are supposed to make our lives easier, big quote unquote, right, or bring us together or connect us, are actually contributing to the exhaustion and the increased emotional labor and the increased weathering that melanated folks and specifically Black folks experience on a day-to-day basis, because we already got to combat the whole world. And now we have to fight, like literally like argue with or like just feel these points of contention around every little tidbit that's placed in front of us of technology that's supposed to make our lives easier, but is only making things harder. Right? So if you could speak to even just the ways in which like technology is actually truly making things more difficult, and even like on a bigger scale, right, outside of like the silly auto-generated helium versus Hella, I think about how you have a lot of these tech companies that have built software and built programs that are like, oh, look, we want to increase the hiring funnel and we want to take out the bias in hiring. So we're going to make all of our applications digital, like online. Everything is online. And we're going to take out the name and we're going to take out the XYZ so that it's completely unbiased. But they're still not getting melanated or diverse applicants. And then even if they do, nobody wants to work for you.
Right. There's a lot of layers to this question.
I know. Sorry. I just threw like a whole other podcast episode on you and was like, talk about it in a minute.
I'm following. Okay. So just on the hiring piece real quick, you actually sort of highlighted something that is extremely important in how the algorithms on the back end sort of work, right? Because what people think is, oh, if we remove the name or if we remove the this, then that's going to make it impossible for the system to be biased. But you have what are called proxies for certain types of categorizations, right? And for mathematics to work, things have to be categorized so that decisions can be made, right? Like that's how it is. There's something in and something out. But there are proxies for specific things. Like there are proxies for whiteness, right? There are proxies for other things. So you might remove the name, but you still have Stanford, Harvard, right? Or you still have an HBCU being identified, and the system is saying, okay, but off of everybody that currently works at the tech company, only 2% of people are from HBCUs. So that must mean we don't hire people from HBCUs. Like that's what the computer is thinking. The computer isn't thinking with any empathy or context. It's saying, we see Black people from HBCUs don't work here. So we're not going to hire people that have Howard on their resume. We're not going to push them up the funnel to be interviewed because it's simply looking at what it's been fed. It's not making a decision and saying, okay, can we counteract this? Now, there's an entire movement in artificial intelligence that's saying, can we design empathetic AI?
How, Sway? I mean, maybe I'm just very jaded. How?
Right. And would there be the process in which you could actually teach the artificial intelligence to counteract what the world would do? That's a whole nother podcast, a whole nother conversation. But if you're interested, you can go and look up ethical AI or, human-centered interaction, which is the field of study between how humans and computers interact together, right? But I think that at the end of the day, it's like you have to understand that there's all these other tidbits that can then produce the same output, even if Black is not on the resume, right? Even if Black is not on the housing loan application, even if Black is not on the credit card application, there's all of these other things that have been used, right? And this makes it harder to operate in the world. And the simplest way I can put it is that it just by 110 million thousand perpetuates the existing racism already. If you were going to get a loan for a house and you had to sit down with an underwriter and give them your information, they got to see that you were a person of color and they got to deny your loan because of that. People think, well, Now that it's in computers, that white person at the bank isn't looking at your face and can't be racist against you. No, that white person at the bank is now operating as an algorithm that was designed and developed by a white person. And it's using proxies like your zip code.
Yep. Yes.
That was created, that you were redlined into. Right? And it's utilizing things like your income. It's utilizing things that you weren't afforded access to because of the constructs of white supremacy. And it's saying this person is not fit for a loan. And in some contexts, if you look at the data, it does do better than like a white racist human person, but that doesn't mean that it does enough, right? Like, I think what happens is, the algorithm for housing loans works better than a white racist person, so we're just going to stop there. And it's like, no, it's still perpetuating white supremacy and racism for so many people.
Right. Less racist isn't equitable.
That's right. And we're always thinking, okay, it's like we got to a place that we hurt less Black people, so we're good. And it's like, that's not how it works. So I think if you really think about how is it making it harder for us, and to the point on social media, I mean, everybody knows how we're literally bombarded on the daily with advertisements. We're bombarded on the daily with messages. We're bombarded on the daily with things that the society, which is underpinned by this oppression, wants us to hear not only about other people, but about ourselves. Social media is, on a low-key tip, maybe this is a high-key tip. Let me just go there, gloves off. Social media, white people are using social media to teach Black people about who they are.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that level of like understanding and discernment on the type of content that you're taking in, white people are teaching you about not only how you should be, what you should buy, how you should operate, the ways in which you should move in the world, and have you thinking that you're operating in Blackness, but you're actually operating in a white version of Blackness. And then you're then sharing that with the rest of your world and the Black people on your feed that are following you. And again, the cyclical repetition of the cycle, like, it's designed to operate in that way, which is why there's such a large fight on social media for voices of color and Black voices to be elevated and to be unrestricted. And social media, don't get it twisted, is utilized specifically and really acutely in a political context to get messages to Black people that are counter to what will actually help them. Like, it is literally designed that way. I mean, you can go and read about Trump and the Russians and all that kind of stuff.
Well, there's a Netflix documentary. I forgot the name, but it'll be in the show notes in this exact moment. It's about Cambridge Analytica. I'm totally forgetting the name of it right now, but it literally talks exactly about this. It'll be in the show notes, y'all. Blame it on my head and not my heart. But I want to, you said something really important that makes me want to like take a little pivot.
And the artificial intelligence, because it needs to be.
We could go there, but where I want to come to is, and you hinted at it a little bit in the beginning, but you were in tech for 10 years. And then you were like, toodaloo, and you left tech.
That's right.
In the traditional sense.
In the traditional sense,
you left tech. In the way that everyone thinks about it, like, you're not within one of the .coms.
That's right.
And I know this, and you could be like, no, we're not going there. I know this because of our personal relationship. There's a lot of reasons for why you made that shift. And it very much mirrors a lot of the reasons that I left trying to fight within, certain existing constructs of society. But I would love for you to talk to us about what it means to get into the .com space, to get into the tech traditional space, and what it actually looks like when you're in it, if you're trying to do what you're trying to do, what I'm trying to do, what, true folks who are truly trying to create liberation.
That's right.
Are trying to do. What does it actually mean to try to do it from within?
That's right. Well, it means oppression. It looks like oppression. It operates like oppression, and it's designed like oppression. And that's just keeping it 100,000, right? I think, so when I moved to the Silicon Valley, I moved in 2014. So I've been in the Bay Area for a good amount of time, which to people that aren't from the Bay Area and haven't seen the rise of how technology has completely changed the makeup of this area, which Weeze knows all about because she was literally born and bred here. The amount of time, what I've been able to see even in that short time frame is insane, the amount of change that has happened. But I think the first thing that I experienced when I joined the technology industry is just straight racism on behalf of white men that's completely explicit in your face. Like the first technology company that I worked for, we actually had to have an all hands meeting with the entire company because a white man decided to do a presentation at our customer conference utilizing blackface as a premise for talking about personal self-branding. Like literally a picture of him in blackface.
And to be clear, 2014, folks.
Yeah. Oh, this was actually in 2013 before I even came to the Silicon Valley.
Okay.
Either way, this was not hella long ago. This was like yesterday.
Right. And so we had to have a whole conspiring of the whole company. And the CEO was a white man and was like, look, like you're not treated with privilege if you're a white male working at this company and blah, blah, blah. But then it takes like 1,700 months for them to talk about if they should fire this person. Now, if I showed up to work and I was like, I would get fired immediately. Like,
Yeah.
I would be on spot, on site. If I showed up in a FUBU jersey, I'm getting fired. So, but it's like, we always have to have, culturally in technology, there's this long-winded conversation about, should we let somebody go because they were racist or
Right.
sexist or oppressive in any way? Should we even have a conversation about that? And it's like, are you kidding me? And then you've got, don't even get me started on how a lot culturally, you've got DEI programs or programs that are supposed to uplift Black people operating underneath the human resources department of a company. Like, are you, I'm going to say on this podcast in public, are you joking? For every single tech company that currently exists and you have DEI programs to help people of color operating under HR, you are trash AF, period. And for any Black person that works in a DEI department that operates under HR, you really need to look at yourself. And some people are going to hear this and they're going to know that that's them. And it is what it is. Because human resources is working underneath the protection of the company. That's what human resources, it's not protecting the employees.
No, human resources is created, developed, insulated, and evolved for the sole purpose of protecting the profit and the well-being of the corporation for which it serves.
That's right. Like slave patrol.
Girl, you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, I don't give a fuck about the employees.
You are a resource to this company, which means we need to protect our property. And we will do that at the expense of the property, period.
100%.
So I think that, you know, we really need to take a look at the culture of technology and understand that it was built on that premise to begin with. But there's a lot of horrible things happening in that context when you're operating in a company and then you're trying to combat that from within, right? You have people doing amazing work in employee resource groups or ERGs, which are groups constructed in the technology industry that were created by or for people of color to help them navigate the world, right? And some people are like, well, why do we need employee resource groups? I'm like, well, because we're working for a racist company. Like, I wouldn't have stayed at Google for almost 5 years or whatever if I wasn't a part of Black Googler Network. And shout out to everybody that is a part of Black Googler Network that I interacted with over the years I was at Google and still have lifelong friendships with. Like, we were trying to do important work from the inside out, but we were, not only were we held back by, sometimes we were held back by white people. Sometimes we were actually pushed forward by white people and held back by people of color and Black folks. Black folks said, oh, I don't want to associate with the Black Googler Network. I don't want to say that as a Black executive, I sponsored this Black Googler Network event.
I'll say the thing very specifically, and I'm not going to name names because of companies, but let me just say there are at least a handful of .coms whose Black and melanated ERGs have brought me in, who were all about paying me when it was just because the Black ERG or the melanated ERG was like, can you come in and talk to us about, you know, protecting your peace in corporate settings, how to navigate corporate settings while trying to, one, not lose your mind, but climb the corporate ladder, like, you know, play the game smarter. They were fine with that. But the second it was like, oh, now that Black ERG or, you know, the people of color ERG is like, we'd love for you now to speak to like our white counterparts, or maybe do an actual equity training for the company at large. It was like, oh, no. We don't know that we can, the money for that, or we can't this, or, well, you already approved me. I'm already in your vendor system. You already made me do 15,000 backflips through fucking fires or like, hoops of fire and with crocodiles.
You got me putting my blood in a tube and...
You know what I mean? And then at the very end, exactly, I had to give you a blood oath just to get in to speak to the Black ERG about how to navigate this racist ass system to protect their mental health. But God forbid, now it's too much. Now you can't afford it, quote unquote, or y'all don't have time. Fuck out of here.
Right. And now you're going to pay me on a 90-day pay schedule.
Oh, don't even, girl. When it was for the Black ERG or whatever, it was, yeah, no problem. We'll pay the invoice. And now all of a sudden it's net 180.
Nah,
Get the fuck out of here.
I need my money today.
Okay. Because I know how y'all operate. But I say all of that to say, I can tell you for a fact, breathing, living, secondary, other side of the like, I've never been inside of tech. So Maddie can tell you from inside of tech, and I can tell you professionally dealing with the tech world, that is 1000% the absolute truth. It's like, as long as it's like the human resources or whoever department is like totally down, as long as it's like, oh, you're just talking to the folks who we already know this shit is fucked up.
That's right. That's
cool. Yeah, go talk to them. Have fun having conversations with yourselves. We're not actually going to change, though. Oh, you want to talk to us now about actually fixing the problem that is causing the stress that the Black or melanated ERG asked you to come in and talk to them about? Oh, no.
Also, tech is so well known for white executives getting up on a stage when there's a problem that's been presented to say, okay, we're going to talk about issues in the Black community at Google, or we're going to talk about issues in the queer community at Google. Excuse me, Madison is actually here to come up on stage and talk about this problem because there's no accountability or ownership of the problem. The problem is pushed onto the people that are experiencing the problem, and it is expected of the people that are experiencing the problem to fix the problem through under-resourced ERGs. ERG work is not full-time paid work. We was getting it for people of color and Black people for $0.
Correct.
And lower promo standards, because at the company that I came from, I had my white female managers telling me, why are you spending so much time doing stuff for Black Googler Network? And how does that actually map to or align with what you do as your daily job to make me look better? Because I'm not actually good at my job as a mid-level manager, managing people that are better than me. And it's like, I'm actually making it possible for me to live here and to come to work every day as a Black woman. When you asked to touch my hair last week, you can miss me with all that. And that's what a lot of people are operating on a daily basis, working in offices, working on teams, working in settings where they might be the only person of color. I mean, I've been in so many situations where I've been not only the only Black woman or only Black person in a room on an entire team of 100 people, of 100 I work in marketing communications and tangentially in product management, but a lot of people in engineering departments, like you could go into a room full of 200, 300, 400 engineers at Google and nobody is Black, or any other tech company, insert XYZ. I think people also, just to paint a picture for you of how small, because of the hiring algorithms are racist, just like the racist people working in HR, there are like, we had an event when I was at Google that was for State of Black Women. It was an event for all Black women at Google to come together and talk about all of the things that they were experiencing and have kind of like a 2-day, 3-day conference type of situation. I was at the inaugural State of Black Women and also at the subsequent ones after that. I don't know if they're still doing that event programming now, but all of us, all of the Black women that worked at Google in the entire company, which is 100,000 plus employees, could fit into one room, into one small, very, very small auditorium that's used for like product demos. When people come and visit Google and want to see products in action, we could all fit into that room, all whatever, 600-700 of us. And then people want to say, oh, well, we're hiring women of color. What's the problem? And it's like, but how are you looking at the experience and the attrition rate? And Black women is the number one segment that comes into tech and leaves because of the issues that they face working on a daily basis in the technology industry. And people are just kind of like, what's going on. And then there's a whole nother side to this conversation, which is about startups and access to capital. So culturally, we've talked about in the products themselves, we've talked about in the way the products operate. All of this stacks on top of each other to create a very oppressive environment where you come to work every day asking yourself, who am I? And if I am who I say I am, how am I still here? And do the people around me know that I'm really with the smoke? Or do I have to operate in a code switch? Because yesterday my manager talked about how this actually happened to me, talked about how people that work in service industries, AKA synonymous with people of color that do low income jobs, have to learn how to be nice to the people that they're serving in a restaurant when they go through something hard in life if they want to get a tip.
See, this is why I left corporate America.
Then sends me a video of my nigga playing in the background.
No, you a lie. I mean, I know you're not, but goddamn.
Of a dap between President Obama and KD.
What's her name? You could tell me offline. No, you could tell me offline. Just send me her.
So anyways,
I'll send her a message.
It was a white male.
I'll send him a message. Whatever.
The point I'm trying to make is this. You get to a point where you look at how you're operating and how much you've had to change yourself to operate in a world that affords you what are called the golden handcuffs, right? Because you're paid well, you're given stock options, you're given free food every day. You're basically told that if you don't work here, you will not be able to create generational wealth for yourself or for your family. And you got cousins and aunties and brothers and mamas and grandmothers and people to take care of. And you got student loans at the wazoo because you had to pay for college because didn't nobody have a fund that they could give you. And you've got all these things weighing down on you that were created by the constructs of white supremacy. You're then given an opportunity designed by the constructs of white supremacy to get yourself out of what white supremacy put you in. And then you're just sitting there like, how did this happen? How did this happen? And that's the conversation that I had with myself and many people that I've worked with. And I still am in the technology industry. I work, we started our own organization, me and my co-founder, Nitty, called the Edtech Equity Project. And there's still many people that are working within these companies doing really amazing, foundational, transformative work. But they are laboring on a daily basis to just be able to be who they are and to see themselves as who they are. Yeah. And it needs to be put out there. It's disrespectful, but it's at this point, I can't believe that it's even allowed to happen. But I mean, it is what it is. That's how the world is. That's why we're here talking about this and bringing light to the issues. But there's a real, I think, the Great White Awakening is what.
That's what I call it.
What you call it. In many contexts, that's happening in the technology industry currently. And a lot of people asking for accountability on what is happening on the inside of these companies, what is happening on the inside of these algorithms, what is happening on the inside of all these things that people think are just slides and free food and a little hat with a little swirly thing on top, and we all happy and we good.
Yeah.
There's black blood on those hats. Like, is anybody going to say that?
No, they're not. It's not in their best interest to say that. It's not in their best interest to tell the truth.
Which is why then people of color that expose racism that's happening in technology, like the amazing work that Timnit was doing at Google around artificial intelligence and exposing things in her research that highlighted how the company's operations were perpetuating or creating bias, just gets iced out. It was like, yeah, because that is money. Period. We live in a
fuck with that white bottom line.
We live in a capitalistic society. Everybody and all these white people are coming out with like these presentations and TED Talks, like, we believe in the triple bottom line: profits, people, peace, whatever. It's like, no. At the end of the day, if it is going to require that a company spend more engineering resources to not harm people of color, they will choose not to do it because that's money. So stop thinking that these companies are getting woke or they're going to choose to do the right thing. They have to be forced through policy, through advocacy, through liberators, through people who are going to refuse to allow the system to hold them down to actively make the decision to do this work. And it's not easy, right? At Edtech Equity, we're telling edtech companies that are designing AI for technology products that your outcomes that you're producing in classrooms are harming Black children. And they're like, oh. And then we're like, did you know that if you think about this in a different way, you can actually maybe have better revenue or better capital gains because you're designing for people of color and Black people and not just one subset of students. And they're like, ding, ding, ding. It's not a kumbaya moment, right? So I think we also just need to be having real conversations with ourselves about what are the strategic ways that we combat what is happening, and how do we message it in a collective way that gets things done and drives people to action.
I feel like you didn't even, I know you didn't do this on purpose, but it was like, and full circle. Here's like the perfect little bow on the episode. Unless there is anything else that you're like, I gotta say this, the people gotta hear it. I feel like this is such a good, just like chunk of eye-opening information for folks who really, this is new for people to be thinking about, just like kind of like layman's people, right? To be thinking about, what does it actually mean when we say algorithms of oppression or AI or tech, racism? What can they actually do, especially if you are one of those people that works in one of these companies, right? And guess what? Unless you are like a teacher or maybe like a few other, maybe like manual labor, something like that, you are one of those people. Even if you're not in a quote unquote traditional like Google, Facebook, Apple, whatever, like every single company that exists on this planet is either actively contributing to the creation of this technology or the consumption and perpetuation of it. Like if maybe you're using software that you're like, oh, this shit is racist as hell. Like it is actually your responsibility to write an email to that company because you are a consumer of their product, right? I work for Coca-Cola. Let's just use them as an example. I work for Coca-Cola. I recognize that we use XYZ software. We're a massive company. I have a problem with your software. It has recently come to my attention that y'all are hella racist. Obviously, write it in a different way. Write it however you want it. Actually, I would write it just like that. But you do you.
And then when you say hella racist, make sure to put at the end, feed this as a data point into the system so it can understand the contextualization of the way I used hella. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Also, make sure you're using our shit right. Thank you, period, send. But it really is. It's all of our responsibility, right? Like you don't have to be as well-versed as young Maddie over here. I definitely am not. I'd be looking at Maddie sometimes. I'm like, say it again. Explain that to me. Or I go to the internet because Google is in fact free no matter how racist it is. So, right? Like you can learn yourself something and you can still be a part of actionable collective change, right? Everybody's voice is necessary. Even if it's just you continuously sending the email to say, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. I don't like this. This is a problem. That is how change occurs. I also want people to remember to leave Black people alone. I just had to say that because the underlying theme in like every single episode we ever do when we have, I don't know who I ever do, when a person of color, but specifically a Black person comes on and they talk about their personal experience in the workplace, there is inevitably a story about a white person whiting it up. And so this is just your regular reminder to check your microaggressions and have a seat.
I really hope a white person doesn't white this up because then I'm going to just have to start saying people's names publicly.
Second episode. Bonus episode coming soon.
All the white people that asked to touch my hair in the last 10 years in technology.
But that's my point also. Leave Black folks alone. Like, don't go, if you are that person or you think you were that person either directly to Maddie or somebody in your office, don't go being like, hey, I heard this episode with Maddy Jacobs and I that time I touched your hair, I sent you that video with KD and Obama. I just want to apologize. Like, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Leave Black folks alone. That's 2. And 3 is Maddie gave us a lot of language, a lot of gem drops, a lot of things that you can go Google and expand on and learn more of. A lot of that will be in the show notes. Maddie's org will be in the show notes. Like, y'all can go continue to learn and continue to support. We are only getting more and more invested and intertwined with technology. This is not changing anytime soon. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we are actually pushing to dismantle the relationship that it has with white supremacy, both upholding it and being informed by it, the same way we do every other system. Because at this point, technology is making it easier for our existing systems, the carceral system, the injustice system, housing, education, to continue to perpetuate racism. It's just making it easier. So, Maddie, thank you so much for being here. Are there any last gems that you're like, oh, I really got to say this thing, the people got to know this?
I just want to say you have agency. You have agency.
Yes.
If somebody didn't tell you that today, you have agency over the technology in your life, how it affects you, how it's used. You can put it down. You can learn more about it and be in conversation with human beings. Like, go to Google and type in, okay, hold on, natural language processing and hella. Do that, right? Or go into Google and type, when somebody said the N-word to, Alexa, what happened? Like, when somebody Googled pictures of Black people and monkeys popped up, like, go and read those articles, but bring that back into the real world and have conversations with people in your community, right? And share the information that you learn, but also use the discernment that you have to check the information that you're seeking and that's being fed to you. And that's what agency is about. And code belongs to Black people.
Yeah.
Not just white people, right?
Yeah.
And we play such an important role culturally and societally to require ourselves to take the agency that we have, that they try to tell us that we don't, to make change in the technology world. And I'm just honored to work with so many people that are on that movement and doing those things. And we need more. So this is your call to action to join us in this combating.
Mic drop.
Dropped.
All right, y'all. That's it for us. If you want to hear a little bit more from Maddie, go over and subscribe to Podia. That's where her Weezenaire will be. It was hella fun. If you want to get to know her a little bit more. And until the next episode, that's all I got. All right, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. All right, y'all. That's all I got. But don't forget your action items. 1, join me on Podia, where you can get access to tons of BTS content, including a very special Weezenaire interview with all of our guests. 2, rate, review, especially a written review, subscribe, like, and share this podcast with all of your peoples. 3, if you aren't already, go peep me on IG, follow me there, and, most importantly, keep coming back. All right, until next time, toodles!